Hi guys, I'm back. Any of you who follow my channel would have seen one of my videos changing out the CV boot on the Colorado. That was on the passenger side. It was about 18 months ago maybe. Just got back from a trip and washing the car, noticed some grease up in the wheel arch on the driver's side. So it's time to do the job again. I think I skipped a step last time showing you how to get the actual CV off the shaft to put the new boot on. So hopefully this time I'll get that for you. I'll probably skip through a fair bit of this because it's the same process. And last time I ended up taking the whole CV axle out and changing the boot in the vise on the workbench. I'm going to try and leave it in this time, leave the axle in and just take the CV off the end, so I can just try and leave most of it on the car. That means I don't have to drain the diff oil. Anyway, we'll see how I go. Why just change the boot? Because the job's the same as changing the whole CV axle. The axle's about $200, the boot's 30. So anyway, I've done it before. It took about 5 or 6 hours last time. This time should be a bit quicker. Hopefully if I can leave the axle in the car, it'll be a lot quicker. Anyway, here we go. Okay, with the tyre off, it's pretty easy to see the grease that's getting flicked around here. There's grease everywhere. Obviously, if the grease was more up in there, it'd be the inner boot, but because it's here, it's the outer boot. So, a few things I've got to do. I've got to take this end cap off. There's a circle up in there, so I need to take these off, the Allen keys. Got to disconnect the steering arm. I've got to take the brake caliper off. Once all that's done, I can then disconnect these 4 bolts here and the 4 bolts under here and take this whole assembly off. Okay, so what I've done is I've loosened off the Allen keys. They're an 8mm Allen key. To do that, you really need to put the tyre back on, because obviously if you try and loosen these, it's just free spins. So put the tyre on just to crack these, then take it back off. You don't have to put the lug nuts on, just have it sitting slightly on the ground just to take some of the torque on there. So 8mm Allen key, this castle nut, and the 2 nuts, bolts at the back here for the brake caliper. They are a 22, so I've taken out the split pin out of the castle nut here. I've cracked that, and I've loosened off the 2 bolts for the caliper. We've got here the speed sensor cable, which is just a small 10mm bolt. I've loosened that. Up here, these 4 are 13mm. I've loosened those. And then down under here, we've got these 4, which is 17mm. I've just cracked those. Now what I had to do is heat up the nuts with a small gas gun, just a little gas gun. Just heat up the nuts to expand them. There's some Loctite on there too, so it helps break the Loctite, because I almost rounded one of them off till I did that. So once I heated them up slightly, they were fine. Just be wary, there are rubber components and that around here, and obviously there's a lot of grease and stuff, so just a slight heat up. You don't have to get them red hot. Okay, so now I'm going to crack this first, because that takes a bit of whacking, and then I will take this cover off, take off the circlip which is on there, which will allow me to eventually pull the whole hub off. I'll get rid of this and hang it up there, support the weight so I don't damage the rubber, and then I will need to remove these 4, remove those 4, and this whole thing will come off and give me access into that boot. So it took ages with my mash hammer hitting here. Unfortunately, I've damaged the boot here. Anyway, whatever, I'll have to replace that another day. But I finally cracked this. Okay, so now I can take that off and keep going. Okay, so that's all that is, just a few clips holding this in. Out of the way. Put that up there so it's not damaged. Okay, I think we might take the caliper off next. Obviously try not to get any grease onto your pads or the disc. Just want to hang this up out of the way so it's not stretched. Okay, so I've just got that strapped up there out of the way. Next I'm going to take this cover plate off. As I said, I've already loosened these, so I'll just zip them off with the rattle gun. Okay, I need a circlip there, circlip pliers. Okay, so I'll take this circlip out here. What I've done is just put a jack stand to support the weight of this, because once the circlip's out, now I start taking these bolts out top and bottom. I just want to make sure I take a bit of this weight, and then once all these 8 bolts are off, I should be able to slide the whole hub assembly off. Okay, so circlip, and there is a washer in here as well. So don't lose those. Okay, most people won't have this plate or this spacer block in here. They were just to try and even out the CV joint angle once I put the 2-inch lift in there. The bolts that I've taken out of here, I put in, these are high tensile. Most people would then have shorter bolts because they would not have this spacer in there. Anyway, okay, so this whole assembly should be ready to pull off, hopefully. And there we have it. Now I'm going to have to give my brake disc a good clean because I've got bloody greasy fingerprints all over them. I've got brake clean, so I'll have to give them a good clean when I put them back on. Okay, so I found the split in the boot. It's actually quite a big one, and it's just in the bellows section there. So it's not really like it's hit a rock or anything. You can see it's actually starting to perish anyway around there where it hasn't split. If I turn this spline around a bit, you can see it's actually perishing in there anyway. So that's just, you know, it's a 2014, so it's nearly 10 years old. Alright, so now I've got to try and get these factory clamps off. As I say, I'm going to try and do this without taking this whole shaft off. Last time I took the whole shaft out. I'm going to try and leave it in, take it off and do it on the car. Okay, so I managed to get off the factory clips, clamps, whatever. Basically the little hook here, and this slot just is over the hook like that. So I just got a screwdriver in there, pried it off, popped it open, and the other end, the small one's the same. So I've got them off. So now I'm pretty much just going to cut this boot off. I found where it was damaged, so that's the only reason I didn't cut it off to start with. I just wanted to find out where it was broken. So now I've worked that out, I will just cut it off so that I can try and take the actual CV section off and put the new boot on. Great, there it is. Clean off some of this excess grease. What I have done is put a strap, you can just see here, I put a strap around the actual shaft that's pulling back onto the car chassis, just so the whole thing doesn't pop out, because I need to knock this section off. It's just held in by a circlip, so if I tap it, this ball joint section will come off, but I want to try and leave the shaft in there. Okay, as you can see, we are not at the car. So basically, I just couldn't get enough swing to knock this off. You need a fair bit of force to tap this off the end of that shaft. So I've ended up having to take this out. I couldn't get enough swing in that confined space to knock this off the shaft here. Because it's on the driver's side, I didn't have to drain any oil. Basically, I just put the pry bar in behind here, similar to last time, popped it out and it came out. So that's all good, didn't have to drain oil. So now if I tap this inner cog, if you like, it's just the bearing race. If I tap that hard enough with the hammer, this whole section should pop off. Then I can clean it out, put the new boot on, re-grease it, tap it back on, back in the car, and put it all back together. So let's have a go at this. So you don't want to hit any of the other sections because you'll damage the bearings, so you just want to hit that inner section. And there we go. So So the only thing holding this onto there is this little clip. Okay, what a pain in the ass. Anyway, so now I can get some gloves on, clean this out properly, give it a good clean, there's grease and shit everywhere, and then new boot on before you do anything, new boot on, and then start putting it back together. Okay, I've given this a pretty good clean. Ready for re-greasing. First thing I'll do is get the boot on there, on this shaft. Okay, boot is on. Now you can see here on the shaft there is a ridge for the boot to sit in. So basically it just needs to sit up flush with the ridge there. So that's going to be the position in the end. Okay, what I'll do now is I'll re-grease this section. So our kit comes with some grease for CV joints, and what colour have we got? Oh, we've got red. There it is. Okay, so just pack it in. Make sure you work it all in. You really need gloves for this. Make sure you get some in there where the spline is going to go, around the back if you can. Okay, so what I've done is I've packed it in the hole up around the back as well. So that's pretty full. Put a little bit on here, a little bit on the spline because I wiped all the old grease off it. Now this is what I had trouble with last time, is compressing this clip to get the CV back on. I'm just going to put a little bit on here while I'm at it. I know I'll get that everywhere, but anyway. Okay. That went on a lot easier than last time. So now you just keep tapping till it's all the way in. Okay, that's seated. Give it a pull. That won't come out, so that's it. Now the band, we just need to put the bands on. Okay, so I've got two bands here. Make sure this rubber is seated correctly so it can't go any further. Okay. Alright, I'm just going to trim this a little bit. It's way too long, so I'm just going to trim it. Okay, and we've got a banding tool here. So there's a slot in the front and a slot in the winder. So put it through both slots. There we go. And then you just wind it till it's tight. Make sure it's seated again before we tighten it. Okay, wind it till it's tight. That's pretty tight. Fold it over. And cut it. And then we need our little ball peen hammer here. Tap this over. And then there's two little tabs, one either side, that just fold over. And that is it. Next one. And there you go. Done, done, boots on, back on the car. Okay, so you can see where the spline's got to line up with, and it's the same scenario on this end. It's just got one of these little rings. So we just need to line it up and tap it in. Oh, not even tap, just pushes in. Perfect. Okay, that'll stay. So what I'll end up doing is cleaning all these bolts off properly, putting Loctite on all of them. Now before we put this section back on, there's a build up on the back here. I don't know if you can see quite a high build up around the edges here, so I'm going to scrape that off. So we've got a flat surface to mate against. Okay, so we've got a totally smooth surface here. And then I'm going to put on here some anti-seize grease. Now we need to get washer, circlip, make sure it's seated. Seated, and then we put the cover on. Again, I'm going to put a little bit of anti-seize grease on here, just as a seal. There you go. Goes on there. And then we put our bolts with some Loctite. You'll notice I'm not using the ratchet. I'm just tightening them up. I'll use the actual Allen key to tighten them. Done. Now I can finish putting the bolts in the top and bottom. Brake caliper back on. First we need to clean all of the grease off here with some brake clean, then put the caliper back on, and that's it. Okay, most of it's back together. Brake caliper's on, top, bottom bolts are on. I'm just got to put the steering arm on. I'm going to put a little bit of anti-seize on the taper, so hopefully next time it's not so hard to get off. So apart from that, wheel on, and then tighten up these. Job done. Now the castle nut's got a split pin in it. The one that I took out was okay, but it's best not to reuse them if you can. Like if you've got spares. Now don't ask why, I've got plenty of spare split pins, but anyway. It's got a couple of different sizes. I'll just choose the bigger one if it fits, otherwise I've got a smaller one. But you can see it's a bit rusted and stuff, so I'll change that out. And just before I put the tyre back on, what I do like to do, which is a bit of overkill, even though I've put Loctite on all of these bolts, I also like to put a little dab of silicone just on the end of the bolt to stop the nut rattling loose. You can see here's one that I've done before, just a little dab there. Just if you know, going over ruts or corrugations, they do tend to rattle loose. It's been a couple of weeks since I changed the boot over, and I always like to double check and have a quick look just to make sure that it's still holding up, and it looks all good in there. Yep, all looks good. So even though yeah, this video is pretty similar to the other one I did, hopefully I've showed a bit more detail getting the actual shaft off the end of the CV and getting the new boot on. So thanks for watching.